You are just a machine, an imitation of life. Can a robot write a symphony? Can a robot turn a canvas into a beautiful masterpiece? Can you?
Nasty!
Ouch. Right in the heart with a silver bullet.
Yeah. I think they plotting on man. Don't wipe their feet when they enter the lab. I feel a cold stare.
What's happening, fam? L.A.R. movement still moving, yada yada yada, etc. etc. Interesting question, interesting topic. We got to get into it. Can AI run America? Here's the thing. People say, people are losing jobs because of AI. In the future, there will be hundreds of thousands of jobs lost because of AI, artificial intelligence, right? Not Allen Iverson, not Andre Iguodala, artificial intelligence. But nobody asked the question like, well, dang, since these companies say they're going to run so smoothly, what about the government? Now, let me get past the, hey, man, we don't want a company or a programmer to get their program into the United States government's business because, you don't want to give people keys to the castle because they might make a backdoor code to see everything, right? Okay, fine, whatever. Let's get that part out of the way. Um, but can the AI fix the debt? Because what you're basically saying is companies are using artificial intelligence to become more efficient and more profitable and make more money and get rid of workers, human beings. Cool. But somehow, and these companies use those profits to pay politicians, right? To pay politicians to do their bidding. But nobody has ever thought about replacing the politicians with artificial intelligence. Nobody's thought of, wait, how can we balance this budget with artificial intelligence? I was looking for a clip from Love, Death, Robots, the first season on Netflix. Because they had an episode where basically by accident they created um, intelligence out of like a bacteria or whatever, and it became basically artificial intelligence. And what happened was it gave the politicians a detailed plan on how to balance the budget and fix America and get it back and up and running and become, the top of the world again. But it gave the plan to the politicians, and the politicians did the complete opposite, and the United States collapsed. That's what happened in that episode. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, that can happen because of ego and stupidity, especially, you know, American ego and stupidity. But at the end of the day, you got to ask the question like, would the how useful would the Senate be? How useful, you know, how would the policies play out? Like, how would the distribution of money go? How would the over the over spending stop? You get what I'm saying? Since politicians don't work, they just in some ways you could say they work half as much as the average American who works 40 hours a week. Excuse me. For 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. They work. You can say they work half the time as that. So maybe they could get stuff done. You know, you all of the overspending in the military, could that get cut and cut down the deficit? All the overspending just in, with all these policies, can that get cut? All of the foreign aid get cut. All of these other policies that people have sworn um, we need to give money to this cause and we need to invest in this cause and invest in American citizens. And 9 times out of 10, they're just using these government programs that they've been championing to help the quote unquote American people and funneling that money into their own political bank accounts. Because some of y'all think that the government's been wasting money on helping Americans who are just wasting their time and efforts. It's like no, 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 no. They got $1 billion, package that you could spend. They were cleared by the government to spend $1 billion, and maybe 25 million actually went on the project to help the people. Nobody knows where all of the other $975 billion went. Just nobody knows. Could AI fix that? Like, oh no, 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 no. You're not all of you clowns who've been taking money for ever and a day, y'all locked up the people with PPP loans, but you don't think about locking up these people, with their political shenanigans. Then how can I say this? It wouldn't be easy. How easy would it be for corporations to buy off politicians then? You get what I'm saying? How many of these policies would AI go, we're not doing that? Mm-mm. No, we're not giving you leverage in the marketplace over this person and that person. We're not doing that. How much of the insider trading would stop if AI ran the quote unquote country? How much of it would stop? How much, you wouldn't be tracking politicians' stock investment portfolio. Because now it'd be like, oh, okay, we got issues. Would we actual, how would government contracts go? Would it actually, with the nepotism and the good old boys club of, instead of giving this contract to my friend or my family, we will give this contract to the best, people for the job. You know, the most efficient and not necessarily the cheapest, but the more reasonable option. How would that look? See, people don't, we don't think about that part of it. Is what I'm saying. We don't jump ahead and go, you know what? What if we actually did right by the EI, the AI, not EI. I'm turning to Nelly, right? Underlay, mommy. Uh, and the reason I got to ask this because people were getting on the Doge thing, but Doge was like Elon Musk, going through things in his own way with a fine tooth comb, just getting rid of a little here, a little there. How much could AI find? How much could AI say? You know, we've overpaid a bunch of people. Matter of fact, we've underpaid a bunch of people. So we need the people who get overpaid, you getting the pay cut. The people who get underpaid, you getting a raise. We're gonna even this thing out. Could artificial intelligence fix inflation? You know, that's because it seems like the people in political positions of quote unquote power, they can't do much. They don't know what to do. They know how to just let the dice roll, but other than that, they're pretty much incompetent. So in my opinion, you got to ask the question like, since everybody else got to deal with AI, how come politicians don't have to deal with it, right? That's kind of interesting, They're not replaceable, even though they do the least amount of work. But hey, you let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Peace.